right, strap yourselves in, everybody, because today we're hitting the 90s. A deep dive into, you guessed it, sliders.
Yeah.
We've got all kind of rad stuff here, fan wikis, episode guides, and whoa,
Check out
a couple of vintage Sliders comic books.
I've got to say, these comics are like a window into a whole expanded Sliders universe.
Yeah.
You know, stuff beyond the TV series.
Totally. And our listeners, super curious about these comics.
Yeah.
Wants the full lowdown on what went down to those 4-color adventures.
Yeah.
Now, for anyone who's been living under a pop culture rock, Sliders was this awesome sci-fi show that, like, totally warped our brains back in the day.
Right.
You remember the premise, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Quinn Mallory, this brilliant but kind of reckless college student, accidentally creates a wormhole, like a gateway to other universes.
And boom, he ends up sliding through all these alternate realities with his crew, his physics professor, the always skeptical Maximilian Arturo, his best friend and total computer whiz Wade, and Rembrandt Brown, a soul singer who gets swept up in the whole crazy situation. Yeah, the show ran for 5 seasons, and let me tell you, there is some serious drama both on and off the screen, cast changes, behind-the-scenes shakeups.
Yeah.
It was almost as wild as the alternate Earths they were visiting.
For real. But these comics, man, they crank the weirdness up to 11 and take the Sliders in some seriously bonkers new directions.
Yeah.
Are you ready to slide into these stories?
Let's do it.
All right, so cracking open this first comic, the first thing that hits me, the art is totally bodacious. They nailed the actors' likenesses, especially Jerry O'Connell. As Quinn, it's like they jumped right out of the TV and onto the page.
Well, the artist was Dick Giordano, a total legend in the comic book world. He worked on some of the biggest titles for Marvel and DC.
Whoa.
No wonder he captured the characters so well.
Totally. Now, this first story, it kicks off with our Sliders landing on this totally freaky Earth ruled by, get this, giant mutant ants.
Oh, yeah. Talk about a bad trip, huh?
Right. I think the comic really captures the horror of that moment.
Totally. But before they can even say, hasta la vista, baby, to those creepy crawlies, they slide into another dimension, a desolate San Francisco, completely drained of life by this mysterious force called the Rays.
Yeah, it's definitely a darker, more horror-infused take on Sliders, you know, compared to the lighthearted stuff we often saw on the show.
Oh, for sure. But hold on to your hats, because here's where things get really interesting. We're introduced to the big bads of this comic book arc. Those are Curvians.
Oh, yeah.
These dimension-hopping energy vampires with this serious case of the munchies for, well, entire Earths.
Yeah, their origin story is pretty fascinating. They come from a 2-dimensional world called Flatland, and their evolution into 3-dimensional beings, well, it left them with this insatiable hunger for dimensional energy just to survive.
Oh, man.
Talk about a cosmic bummer.
Dude, that's harsh. And get this, they learned about sliding technology from a version of Quinn from another reality. It's like a twisted mirror image of our Sliders.
Exactly. It's like the Zircurvians' desperation to survive. They consume the energy of other Earths.
Right.
It kind of mirrors Quinn's desperate search for his own home, Earth.
Whoa. Deep, man. So basically, these Recurvians are running around, raising an entire Earth just to fuel their existence.
Well, yeah, and their plan is to enslave even more worlds just to sate their hunger. It sets up this central conflict of the comic series.
Not cool dudes. And speaking of messed up Earths, the Sliders next slide into a world that's, well, let's just say it gives alien invasion a whole new meaning.
Oh, yeah.
This Earth is totally controlled by these creepy extraterrestrials who struck a deal with humans back in 1947. Technology in exchange for, get this, being farmed like livestock.
It's a pretty chillin' commentary on the dangers of unchecked power, you know, making deals with forces you don't understand.
Talk about a bad case of buyer's remorse. The poor Sliders can't seem to catch a break, can they?
That's what keeps it so gripping, right? The stakes are high, there's intense action, and it's all wrapped up in these classic Sliders themes, exploring the unknown and the consequences of messing with forces we don't understand.
So what happens next? Do our totally rad Sliders find a way to, like, save the day?
Well, in the second comic, things get even more out there. We meet some advanced Atlanteans,
Blood.
stumble upon a world devoted to, get this, all-you-can-eat buffets.
Hold up. Atlanteans. Like Aquaman style.
Yep, you heard that right.
And a world of endless buffets. Sign me up.
Oh, Arturo was in heaven, of course. But those Atlanteans, they aren't quite the benevolent rulers you might imagine.
Real.
Wade picks up on their less than peaceful methods pretty quickly.
No way. Wade's always been the voice of reason in the group.
Yeah, well, let's just say their utopian society has some cracks in its foundation. It's a classic Sliders twist. Nothing is ever quite as it seems.
All right, but back to Quinn's master plan. How does he manage to outsmart these dimension-chomping Zircurvians? Does he, like, invent some kind of anti-energy sucking device?
He actually goes a bit more low-tech than that. He tricks them into overloading their own sliding engines, causing them to get trapped in a dimensional loop.
Whoa, that's some next-level thinking. So does that mean the sliders finally make it back to their own Earth?
Well, not quite. Remember, their timer's still busted, and I'm sure there's a ton of wild realities waiting for them out there.
It's moments like these that remind us why Sliders is so awesome. It's not just about the cool gadgets and alternate realities. It's about exploring those big questions about freedom and control and what it means to be human, you know?
Absolutely. And that's what makes these comics so fascinating. Even though they're a product of the 90s, they tackle these timeless philosophical dilemmas that are just as relevant today.
It's like they're not just sliding through alternate realities. They're sliding through different aspects of, like, the human experience.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I love about these comics. They capture that core essence of Sliders, the idea that every slide is a chance to learn and grow and confront the complexities of the world, both inside and outside ourselves.
You know?
You remember that moment in the second issue where Quinn has to decide whether to help the Zircurvians?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these guys were literally consuming entire Earths to survive. But Quinn also saw their desperation, like their inability to escape this whole destructive cycle.
Yeah. Heavy stuff. It makes you think, would you risk the fate of countless worlds just for a chance to help a species on the brink of, self-destruction? Even if they'd made some seriously bad choices.
And the way Quinn resolves that whole dilemma, it's brilliant. He doesn't just give them a solution. He challenges them to find their own path, to, like, evolve beyond their destructive nature.
Talk about a righteous lesson in tough love. And speaking of tough lessons, that whole Atlantean world was a real mind-bender. I mean, you'd think a society with advanced tech and perfect harmony, that'd be the ultimate utopia. But
there's a dark side to that perfection. The Atlanteans achieved their harmony by suppressing individuality and free will. They took away people's right to choose, to think for themselves.
Dude, that's messed up. It's like they traded freedom for security, which is a totally bogus deal, if you ask me.
And Wade totally calls them out on it. She sees through their facade of peace and recognizes that the inherent inequality of their system.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that we should always be wary of those who promise easy solutions or try to control our thoughts and beliefs.
Word. Those are the kind of thought-provoking themes that make these Sliders comics so much more than just a nostalgic trip back to the 90s. They challenge us to look beyond the surface and consider the complexities of the world, even in those realities that seem perfect at first glance. All right, so we've talked about giant ants, energy vampires, and even a world devoted to all-you-can-eat buffets, which, by the way, I am totally here for.
Yeah.
But before we get too lost in the multiverse of possibilities, let's take a step back and talk about the comics creators. Didn't we find some info about Tracy Torme, the show's creator, having some pretty wild ideas for these comics?
We did. He apparently passed along a bunch of notes with storylines that never made it into the show.
What?
Imagine even more Sliders adventures, but in comic book form.
Dude, that would have been epic. What kind of crazy concepts was he cooking up?
Well, one idea involved the Sliders landed on a world where magic was real, like full-on wizards, spells, and mystical creatures roaming around. Can you imagine Quinn battling a dragon or Arturo getting into a wizard duel?
Whoa, that's radical. I can totally see Rembrandt rocking a wizard robe and slinging spells like nobody's business.
There was also an idea about a world controlled by sentient plants. Think Little Shop of Horrors, but on a planetary scale.
No way. Talk about a total mind trip. I bet Wade would have had a field day with that one, fighting for the rights of all those leafy green dudes.
Right. Another intriguing concept was a world where humans had evolved into pure energy beings. It would have been a fascinating exploration of consciousness and the nature of reality itself.
Dude, my mind is blown. It's like there was an endless supply of awesome ideas just waiting to be explored.
It really is a testament to the power of the Sliders concept. You can take that basic premise, traveling through parallel worlds, and go in so many different directions.
For sure. It's a bummer that we never got to see those stories play out on screen or in the comics, but hey, maybe there's hope for a revival someday. A Slider can dream, right?
Absolutely. Stranger things have happened in the world of entertainment. With the whole multiverse craze going on these days, Sliders would be a perfect fit for a modern audience.
Right. They could totally tap into all those new ideas about alternate realities and parallel dimensions and the endless possibilities of the cosmos.
Exactly. They could even bring back the original cast for a special reunion episode.
Oh, yeah. But until that glorious day arrives, we've got these 2 comics to keep us entertained.
They may be short, but they're packed with adventure and intrigue and thought-provoking themes that are just as relevant today as they were back in the 90s.
So for any listeners out there who haven't checked out the Sliders comics, do yourselves a favor and track down a copy. You won't regret it. It's a blast from the past that will remind you why Sliders was such a groundbreaking show.
And speaking of blasts from the past, we want to hear from you.
Right on. If you could slide into any of these comic book worlds, which one would you choose and why?
Would you brave the giant mutant ants? Face off against the Zircurvians? Chill with those Atlanteans? Or stuff your face in a world of endless buffets? Let us know.
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And who knows, maybe if there's enough interest, we'll do another deep dive into the Sliders universe. There's plenty of other wild and wacky episodes out there just begging to be explored.
Oh, yeah.
The possibilities are truly endless.
All right, Slider fans, that wraps up our deep dive into the Sliders comic book series. We hope you enjoyed the ride, keep on sliding, and we'll catch you on the flip side.